Here are some dish scrubbies that I did a video tutorial for, where I make a dish scrubby with 3 rounds. And then I also have a video tutorial that shows you how to make the same dish scrubby with color changes, and I use standing stitches in that video tutorial. So if you haven't seen those tutorials, I will leave links in the description box below to those video tutorials if you want to watch those first before watching this video today. Reason why I wanted to do this video today was I've had several people ask, how can you make the dish scrubby larger? And they wanted to know if they could just work another round of double crochets. So I thought this would be a great video to show you how to increase the size of the dish scrubby with a 4th round in 3 different ways. So that way you can customize the size and look of your dish scrubby. This is the next size up, and then I work one that's a little bit larger, and then I work one that has a decorative scalloped edging, and then it looks really pretty when you do this edging, when you do color changes and then connect the 2 pieces together. So this one was one that had color changes for each round, and then I worked another solid one that was pink, and then I put them together, wrong sides together, just like I do in this video tutorial, but instead of doing the slip stitches, I did this decorative scalloped edging all the way around, and now it looks like a pretty flower. In this tutorial today, I'm going to show you how to increase the size of the dish scrubby by working one more round 3 different ways. So let's go ahead and get started. To make the dish scrubbies, I'm going to use this 6-inch wide spool of tulle, and the spools come in lengths of 25 yards, and I will leave a link in the description box below for where I get my spools of tulle, because I usually buy a whole set of it, especially around this time of year. We're getting into the fall and the holidays will be coming up. I love to make dish scrubbies for everyone for the holidays. I definitely like to make them for Thanksgiving as well, because, you know, it's a great thing if you're going over to a family member's or the mother-in-law's house for dinner. What a great gift to give everyone. You know, if you're going to visit someone who's hosting the Thanksgiving dinner, it is a great gift to give them, since of course everyone has to do dishes after the big dinner. So they are a great gift to give to your Thanksgiving host. The reason why I'm doing this tutorial today is to show you how to make a larger dish scrubby. And if you've seen my other tutorials on how to make dish scrubbies, I usually do 3 rounds. I've had several people ask how to make the dish scrubby larger, and they want to do one more round to make it even bigger. So in this video today, I will show you how to make a larger dish scrubby. Let's go ahead and start. And what I do is I use the whole width of the tulle when I crochet my dish scrubbies, so I don't have to cut them into 3-inch strips. Now there are some scrubbies where I do, but for this scrubby, I will not be cutting it into 3-inch strips. I will be using the entire width of crochet along to make my scrubbies today. We're going to start off with a slip knot. And then I'm going to chain 5 chains. And then I'm going to join with a slip stitch to the first chain that I did when I began the round. And that forms a little circle or ring, and I will work my first round of stitches in to the center of this ring. So now I left a good sized tail because I don't want it to unravel on me. If I cut it too short, it could come undone, and I wanted to make sure that doesn't happen. So I leave a good length of tail. Okay, so for round 1, I'm going to chain 1, and while I work this round, I'm going to hold this tail along as well and work over that as well. So that way I won't have to weave it in as much if I work over that tail. So I'm going to go ahead and chain 1, and then I'm going to work 12 single crochets into the center ring. Okay, so I have 9 stitches so far, and sometimes you might have to move the stitches over a little bit, that way you can fit the rest of the stitches. So that was 9. That's going to be 10, 11, 12. Then I'm going to join with a slip stitch to that first single crochet that I did when I began this round. And that completes round 1. Okay, so now for round 2, I'm going to chain 1. And then I'm going to do a half double crochet into that same stitch where I just joined. For a half double crochet, tulle over, insert your hook into that same stitch where you just joined, pull up a loop. You'll have 3 loops, tulle over, and pull through all 3 loops to complete your half double crochet. And then you want to work your stitches fairly loose when you do this round. You don't want to have a really tight tension. We're just going to work 1 half double crochet in the rest of the stitches for this round. Okay, when you're done with this round 2, you'll have 12 half double crochets. And then if you look at your round here, after you have your 12 half double crochets, it almost looks like there's one more stitch, but that actually is not a stitch. That's the slip stitch and the chain up that we did when we began the round. That one, we don't actually count that one. So then you're going to join with a slip stitch to that first half double crochet that you did when you began the round. Okay, and that completes round 2. So when you're done with this round 2, you should have 12 half double crochets. Round 3, we're going to start with a chain 2. Now this chain 2 will not count as a stitch. So we're going to work 2 half double crochets in every single stitch for this round. So into this first stitch where we just joined, that's our first stitch. We're going to do 2 double crochets into that first joining stitch. We're not counting this chain 2, so we're actually going to go ahead and do 2 double crochets into that joining stitch. Okay, so I did 2 double crochets into that same stitch where I just joined, and then I'm going to work 2 double crochets into every single stitch around. Okay, so there's 1 and then 2. So that was 2 double crochets into that stitch. I'm going to do the same thing. 2 double crochets into every single stitch around. Okay, we have 1 more stitch here. So I'm going to do my 2 double crochets into that stitch. And then when you're done with round 3, you should have 24 double crochets plus that chain 2 that we did when we began the round, because I did not count that as a stitch. So we should have 24 double crochets. And then I'm going to join with a slip stitch to that very first double crochet that I did when I began the round. I'm not going to insert it into the top of the chain 2 since I'm not counting that as a stitch. I'm going to join with a slip stitch to the top of the double crochet, the very first double crochet I did when I began the round. And that completes round 3. So now I'm going to do a 4th round. This is where it becomes different than the other dish scrubby that I did. That was 3 rounds. So everything has been the same so far, but now I'm going to add another round. So for round 4, to make this larger, we have 2 choices here. We can do the 4th round with double crochets if you want it to be really big, or if you want it to be somewhere in the middle, then you can do a round with half double crochets for this 4th round. So it's just a matter of preference. So for this round, I'm going to go ahead and do it with half double crochets. And the steps will be exactly the same, except for you'd use double crochets if you prefer that. So it's going to be the same amount of stitches. It'll just be double crochets instead of half double crochets. Okay, so we're going to start off round 4 with a chain 2. So starting with a chain 2. This chain 2 will not count as a stitch. So into the very first joining stitch, I am going to work 1/2 double crochet into that joining stitch. And then into the next stitch, I will work 2 stitches. I will work 2 half double crochets into that same stitch. The next stitch, 1/2 double crochet, and then the next one, 2 half double crochets into the same stitch. The next stitch, 1/2 double crochet. The next stitch will have 2 half double crochets into the same stitch. So you can see what we're doing here is we're alternating, starting off with 1 half double crochet into a stitch, then 2 into the same, then 1 into the next, then 2 into the same stitch, then 1, then 2. And we're going to follow that sequence all the way around. So we're just going to alternate between doing 1 half double crochet, then 2, then 1 into a stitch, then 2 into the same stitch, and do that all the way around. So this one had 2 half double crochets, so the next one will have just 1 half double crochet. Next stitch, 2 half double crochets into the same stitch. I'm just going to do that all the way around, same sequence. Okay, and I just have 2 more stitches to work, so this next one will have 1 half double crochet. And then this last stitch here of the round, 2 half double crochets into the same stitch. And now I have completed round 4 with my half double crochets. And like I said, you can do this round with double crochets. It would be exactly the same way, alternating between 1 double crochet in the first stitch, then 2 double crochets into the next stitch, then 1 double crochet, then 2, and work all the way around exactly the same, just changing to the double crochets instead of half double crochets. So it's just a matter of preference. If you want it to be really big, then you can definitely do the double crochets, or if you want it somewhere in between, do it with the half double crochets. And I'll show you what that looks like side by side. But before I do that, I will go ahead and join with a slip stitch to that very first half double crochet that I did when I began the round. I'm not going to join with the slip stitch into the top of the chain 2, since I'm not counting that as a stitch. So joining with a slip stitch to the top of that half double crochet that I did when I began the round, the first one. And that completes round 4. Okay, so now I'm going to show you a comparison of the original dish scrubby that I showed you that has 3 rounds. But I know that some people really do like the larger dish scrubbies, so that's why I wanted to do this video, because I had several people asking how to make the scrubby larger. So you have 2 options now. You can have it really big if you use the double crochets for the 4th round, or somewhere in the middle. Okay, so here's a side-by-side view of the 3 different sizes for the dish scrubbies. This is the original size that I showed you how to make. This one here is the smaller original dish scrubby that I showed you how to make with 3 rounds, where the first round was the single crochets, and then the second round had half double crochets, and then the third round had 2 double crochets in each of the stitches. So that's for the smaller one. This one, I used half double crochets for the 4th round to increase the size. And then for this larger one, I used double crochets for the 4th round to increase the size of the dish scrubby. So when you look at them side by side, you can really get a good perspective of how different they are if you use half double crochets or double crochets for the 4th round. It really does make it much larger if you use the double crochets. I wanted to do this video because I thought it would be very helpful, because there were several people that asked if they could just add a 4th round of double crochets to make the dish scrubby larger. I thought this would be helpful because it really shows you how much bigger the dish scrubby would be if you added a round of double crochets, because you can see it's much larger if you add the double crochets, whereas if you do a round of half double crochets, it does make it larger, but not quite as big as this. So that's why I thought it would be a great video to do. That way you can really get a perspective of how much bigger it would be if you did a round with half double crochets or a round with double crochets. And now you have a way to customize the size of the dish scrubby depending on what size you want, if you want it to be just a little bit bigger or a lot bigger. So now you have two ways to increase the size of the dish scrubby, and now you can customize the size of the scrubby that you want to make. You can just leave it with one round or make a second round and connect them together like I did in the tutorial if you want it to be double thick. So you don't have to have two rounds and connect them together if you want them to be, you know, like this, a single layer. But if you want it to be double thick, then you would make a second one and then just attach them together. In the video, I usually use a slip stitch all the way around, working in just the back loops only, just like I did here in the original video. That's what I did. I went ahead and did slip stitches to connect the two halves together, where I insert the hook underneath the back loop for the one in the front, and then I find the back loop of the one on the other side, and then I insert my hook underneath that loop instead of inserting them underneath all the loops. I just insert them underneath the back loops only, and then I do a slip stitch, and I do that all the way around to connect them together. So that's what I did with the original one, and you can do that with these as well. So I just do slip stitches all the way around to connect it together, working in just the back loops of the two rounds. So that's how you would do that if you wanted to be double thick. And you could do that with these as well. Or you may decide, since it's larger, that you don't need to make them as thick as the original one. So you might just want to leave them as a single layer for your dish scrubby, instead of making a double thickness for the bigger ones. This is how I normally connect them together if I decide I want to do a double thick dish scrubby. I'm going to go ahead and measure these for you so you can see the difference in size. For all three of these dish scrubbies here, I used the size J10 6mm crochet hook to make them. So this one, the smaller one, ended up being about 3.5 inches in diameter. Then this one in the middle, where I did the fourth round with half double crochets, the diameter is about 4.5 inches. And then this really big one here, where I did the fourth round with double crochets, the diameter measures about 5 inches wide. So that just gives you an idea, and by seeing them side by side, it really gives you kind of a perspective of how big it would become if you did the double crochets. And you may want one that big, but now I just thought it would be helpful to show you two different ways if you didn't want it quite this big, but you wanted it to be somewhere in the middle between the small one and the large one. So I hope that you found the tutorial helpful on showing you how to add a fourth round. And now I'm going to show you another way to increase the size of the dish scrubby if you didn't want to do the fourth round with half double crochets, or if you didn't want to do it with double crochets, because there's another way that you increase the size, which also leaves a nice decorative edge for the dish scrubby the way I'm going to show you now. So I have a dish scrubby worked up here, where it's the original size where I did the 3 rounds with the single crochets, the half double crochets, and the round with the double crochets. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and chain 1, and then I'm going to do a single crochet into that same joining stitch where I did the slip stitch, and then I'm going to work 2 double crochets into that same stitch where I just did the single crochet. And you want to make sure that you don't work these stitches too tightly. Then into the next stitch, I'm going to work a slip stitch. And then into the next stitch, I'm going to work 3 stitches, a single crochet and 2 double crochets, just like I did here. So this next stitch will have a single crochet and then 2 double crochets into that same stitch where I just did that single crochet. And then the next stitch, I'll do a slip stitch. Next stitch, I'll work 3 stitches, single crochet, and then 2 double crochets into the same stitch. So just like I did these two here. Next stitch, slip stitch. And then the next stitch, I'm going to work them just like these ones. I'm going to do the 3 stitches, single crochet, and then 2 double crochets into the same stitch. So you have like a little scalloped edging here. And then the next stitch, I'll work a slip stitch. And then I'm just going to repeat that same way all the way around, where I'll do a slip stitch, and then the next stitch will have 3 stitches, a single crochet and 2 double crochets, then slip stitch, and then the next stitch will have 3 stitches, a single crochet and 2 double crochets, then you slip stitch into the next, and into the next stitch you'll work the 3 stitches, the single crochet and 2 double crochets, slip stitch, and do that all the way around. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that, and we'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. And then once you work all the way around, you just join with a slip stitch. And that completes that 4th round with that nice edging. Then you can see it gives this nice scalloped edging, so it also increases the size. Okay, so that's another way to increase the size of the dish scrubby. So you can see that one is almost as big as this one here. So if I measure this one, the diameter for this one is almost 5 inches, which this one was 5 inches. So it's somewhere in between these two. So that's just another way to do it. So now you have 3 ways to increase the size of the dish scrubby. And I wanted to show you all 3 ways because you might not want this scalloped edging. It's definitely a great option because it allows you to increase the size of the dish scrubby with the 4th round. It's also a nice finished edging for your dish scrubby. So it just looks really nice. It looks really nice when you change colors when you do the dish scrubby. So this one is the same dish scrubby where I did the 3 rounds. And then this 4th round I did with a different color. So it looks really pretty and looks like a flower. So those are the 3 ways to increase the size of the dish scrubby. Now you can work 2 rounds together when you do this scalloped edging here. So when I worked this edging around this one, I only had 1 layer or 1 round of the dish scrubby, but you can make this a double thick dish scrubby if you want. If you want this to be a thicker dish scrubby where you work 2 rounds together, like when I did the dish scrubby tutorial, I worked 2 rounds together and I joined them with slip stitches. What you would do here is you would put the 2 rounds together, and I'll just show you real quick. Okay, I'll show you real quick. I'll just unravel these 2. Okay, so what you would do is you would put the 2 wrong sides together like that. And then instead of joining them with slip stitches, like I did in the other video, what you would do here is you would do the same thing I just did here, but work them together. So I'll show you that. So I'm going to join the 2 pieces together. I'm going to start with a chain 1, just like I did here. And then I'm going to do a single crochet right back into that same joining stitch, but then I'm going to also insert it underneath the 2 loops for the other one behind it. So instead of inserting it just in the back loops only like I did the other tutorial, I'm going to insert it underneath all 4 loops. The front and back loop of the one in the front, and the front and back loop of the one in the back behind it. So now I'm going to do my single crochet, and then I'll work 2 double crochets into that same stitch where I just did the single crochet. So that stitch had 3 stitches, a single crochet and 2 double crochets into the same stitch. And then I'll do a slip stitch into the next set of stitches. What I mean by that is I'll insert my hook underneath the 2 loops for this round in the front and insert my hook underneath both loops for the one in the back, and I will do a slip stitch to join them together. And then I'll find the next set of loops here Then I'll insert my hook underneath the front and back loop of the one in the front, and then I'll insert it under the front and back loop of the one in the back. Pull up a loop and do my single crochet, and then 2 double crochets into that same stitch where I just did the single crochet. And when I work these stitches, I'm working them through both the front and back loops of both rounds. Okay, and then I'll find the next set of loops here, the 2 in the front for the first, the front and back loop of the one in the front, and the front and back loop of the one in the back, and slip stitch. And I'll do that all the way around, just like I did this one, but I'll join them together. I'll work them together, in other words. And you'll just do that all the way around. And that way, when you're done, it will look like this. That's how I did this one. I did the 3 rounds of the dish scrubby, and I made a second one. I did one with the color changes and one with the color pink. And then I just put them together and did the scalloped edging around, joining both pieces together. So that's definitely one way you can do it. So if you don't want one that's really thick, you could do it this way or this way. I really like these ones where you do the color changes. It looks really pretty. So this one was a pink one. This had the color changes, and then I just worked them all together with the scalloped edging when I joined instead of using the slip stitches. Okay, so I just showed you 3 ways to increase the size of the dish scrubby. I hope that you enjoyed the tutorial today, and I want to thank you for watching and have a great day.